So the G2 commander lineup is finally complete. I think so. I think it's complete. It shouldn't be missing any more commanders according to what we've been told so far. But either way, I think it's time for us to update our investment tier list as the roster of Call of Dragons has increased to 32 commanders so far and it will constantly keep increasing over time. So we should set up a priority list together. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down the commanders that need to be awakened and then set it in the list of priorities in terms of your investment so you can maximize your account growth potential. What is up, guys? Meow here, back with a brand new Call of Dragons video. So, I don't think I've updated this list for a while. So, before I get started, the usual, drop the like, subscribe, and let's just dive into what are the currently most important commanders that you need to awaken ASAP when starting your journey in Call of Dragons as soon as you unlock those commanders, and the commanders that don't need to be awakened as soon as possible since they can be viable after their first skill is leveled up or their second skill and so on and so forth. So we're going to be ranking them in terms of must awaken and then 5551, 5511, and 551 and 555 5111. Okay, so do note before I start that every single commander in Call of Dragons in general is usually worth awakening as the power budget of commanders in this game is relatively high, so the value you get from awakening commanders is actually pretty good and it's pretty worthwhile. So don't forget that you do need to awaken everything eventually, or at least the stuff that you're working on currently. However, you can get away with keeping some commanders at certain power levels in order to, get the most. I want to say get the most, but you'll be getting a lot of value from using them at that tier till you eventually awaken them. So, that being said, we're just going to place all the epics from order left to right on the most important ones that you need to awaken ASAP, and the others you can work on passively. So, we're going to be starting off with Waldir. He has to be awakened. He's one of the best epic commanders in the game. We're going to be looking at Atheist. We're going to be looking at Guanwin, Alwyn, Eliana, Craig, Bakar, absolutely worthless. Let's just put Pan first. And then Bakar and Alistair take the last two spots. Both of them are equally worthless and equally useless. So, you know, you can just completely ignore them if you want, or you can just awaken them for the sake of your insider collector. Next up for I don't know which I should take first. I think I'll just work on what's in front of me right now and then just work our way towards it. So, right off the bat, Bakshi is a very strong cavalry commander, but I think he's perfect at 5511. Though, some commanders, when I say that 5511, I don't mean that his second skill has to be at level 5. If anything, Bakshi's second skill is absolutely worthless, but his last skill is very valuable. So, if you can, try to get him at 51115. Just, have two skills level 5 makes him extremely strong, but he doesn't need to be rushed to be awakened, especially because cavalry commanders in general in Call of Dragons tend to fall off value pretty quickly after Season 1. Emrys has to be awakened. He's one of the best cavalry commanders in the game. He brings so much value. His awakening is so strong. So, honestly, one of the best commanders that need to be awakened if you decide to start working on him. Next up, Frhagar. Frhagar is perfect at 5551. She doesn't need that awakening in order to fulfill her function. If anything, she can even be kept at 5511 or even 5111, though I would prefer to at least keep her at a minimum of 5511 just to get that third skill leveled up. So, actually, all three of her skills are pretty perfect, so I would say that she's perfect at 5551 if you want to stop working on her. Because do keep in mind, legendary commanders need 690 tokens in order to be fully awakened after summoning, but 310 tokens of those are spent for the last four levels, which require 75 and 75, then 80 and 80, which is a humongous investment. In general, it's like halfway of leveling up every single skill is spent on the last four. So to keep that in mind when you're setting up your priority lists when you're spending. Garwood 555 51111 is perfect. You don't need him awakened because you get better pairings later on. Hosk is a spending commander, so for spending commanders such as Hosk and Lilia, I would say Lilia is definitely worth awakening in general if you want to rush her up, and Hosk as well are also must be awakened if you want to maximize his potential. Though they are like VIP commanders, and VIP commanders are really tough to rank up, especially because if you have the budget for them, you're gonna awaken them anyways, and if you don't have the budget for them, then you're not gonna awaken them. So it's really hard to rank them. So I don't know. I don't know where to put them. I'll just keep them in the must awaken section. Next up, we got Indus. Indus is really solid. She's a free to play legendary. You can obtain her through the Dragon Trail eventually and then end up awaken her. I think it takes like 3 seasons or 4 seasons of buying her tokens exclusively from the VIP shop in order to fully awaken her. Um, if you want to use her for the open field, you need at least her first skill and her last skill level 5. But since she is a gathering commander, eventually you're gonna awaken her anyways, so I don't really know where to rank her. This list, so I'll just keep her here. Next up, we got Kanara. Kanara, if you ever decide to work on anything archer related, you have to awaken her. She is by far one of the strongest archer commanders, and rather one of the strongest commanders in the game in general, just from the sheer amount of value she provides in every single skill, and her power budget is insanely high. I'm surprised she hasn't even been nerfed yet. So, that in mind, she's definitely worth awakening as soon as possible when you unlock her through the lucky spin. Next up, Big Mommy Madeline. Big Mommy Madeline falls in the same category as Fregar. She's a really solid 5551. You don't need to awaken her in order to fully utilize her. Hell, you can even just fully utilize her at 5511. Though I would highly recommend if you don't want to awaken her, then you most definitely want to keep her at 5551 because her last skill is not really that valuable, and her last skill is kind of for whales more than anything because you do need T5 for them. So, yeah, she doesn't need to be awakened as soon as possible, as soon as you unlock her, but definitely her sweet spot is 5551. Nika, she's useless. No, you can even keep her at 0000. You're never going to use Nika anyways. Just don't bother with Nika. She's only good for the first couple of weeks, and then she just falls off a cliff. Nico, the same. He can be in any tier. To be honest, most of his power budget is in his raid skill, so we're just gonna put him at 511. Though, again, do keep in mind his best skills are his first, then his last, then his third, then his second. His second is the most useless skill on a legendary commander in general because you never want to engineer with archer commanders, especially, even though you can pick up a seasonal talent now that increases your engineering of range units by 100%. Though it's not really worth it. I wouldn't really bother, to be honest. Unless you're a whale and you want to make use of his really strong awakening, I would keep him at 5511. But again, don't level up his second skill. Try to throw up the points between his third and fourth, as he's not really a top tier priority to invest in early on because you have just too many better options. Syndrome must awaken, one of the strongest archer commanders in the game, if not the strongest archer commander in the game. Every single skill he has is amazing, even though his second skill is not the best. But his awakening makes it all the worth, especially if you have a war pet that has chain strike on it that just makes him DPS skyrocket, as you can launch his awakening every 2 turns instead of every three, which in turn increases its DPS potential by 50%. Next up, we got Thea. Thea is a really strong commander, though, and if you don't want to awaken her, you don't need to. Every single skill she has is really good, so I'm gonna just keep her at 5551. You can spend that last 310 in order to make your shield AoE, but do keep in mind that shield only will only cover one extra person, not two as the way the awakening is written. Though if you want to go for it, then by all means go for it. She's a really strong commander right now, especially with the introduction of Bertrand. She's definitely in the meta. She's viable for every single troop type, whether if it's infantry, whether if it's cavalry, whether if it's archers or mages. So overall, a really solid commander to have. But again, you don't need to go all out to awaken her, especially her third skill loses a lot of value if you're not running it with flying units. Next up, Valen, 100% one of the strongest mages right now. Definitely worth awakening ASAP when you start working on him. He's also a gold key commander, which is pretty surprising considering gold key commanders are not that strong, but Valen definitely breaks that rule. Every single skill he has is extremely strong. I think Valen and Kinara are both some of the most broken duo released together to date in Call of Dragons. Both of them in their respective troop types are the backbones of those troop types. Next up, we got Ferrando. He's a cavalry. I'll just keep him at 5511. You don't really want to overinvest in cavalry as they are incredibly useless. Next up, we got Goresh. He's perfect at 5551. Like, the steer is basically made for Goresh. His last skill is really useless unless you're a Giga Whale. And to be honest, if you're a Giga Whale, you don't really care about an investment tier list. You're going to awaken everything eventually. So, yeah. He's more than perfect at 5551. His awakening is not even that strong to compensate for you spending that 310 heads if you are on a budget. Now, Skogul is probably the same boat as Goresh, though, to be honest, if I was to choose which one I would awaken first between the two of them, I would definitely awaken Skogul, just because her awakening actually is really strong. It gives an extra 10% counterattack that will eventually translate into more a counterattack and letting you hit that 100% counterattack threshold on infantry, which is pretty huge considering they start at 50% counterattack versus ranged units. So in turn, ranged units will take the full counterattack damage, which is pretty humongous and pretty worthwhile. Next up, Theodore. Theodore is also cavalry, but if you're a whale, you would awaken him. If you're not a whale, then don't bother with him. He kind of needs everything maxed out in order to function, but other than that, he's not really a good open field commander. Cavalry in general is pretty lacking right now. They get deleted too quickly. Though sadly, he's gonna have to sit with Garwood and Nika unless you're a whale or you're cavalry main, then I would definitely awaken him. But for the average player, cavalry is very inaccessible, so I wouldn't really bother with him in general. Next up, Tohar. Now, the cow of the hour. He's good in the right situations. Okay, he is a very, very, very situational commander that needs the stars to align in order for him to shine. But that's not the topic of this video. The topic of the video is he worth awakening if you're gonna start working on him. To be honest, I wouldn't work on him unless you're a Giga Whale. I wouldn't. I'm just gonna keep him within this. Like, I wouldn't start working on Tohar unless you're a whale and you need him leveled up in order to really shine. But Tohar needs his full awakening in order to really function out in the open field, right? You need that extra 35% attack to make his channeling worthwhile, and you need his last skill leveled up, and you need his last two skills completely leveled up in order to kind of survive the field, especially if you move, you don't lose that much value. So to be honest, I'll keep Tohar in the 5111, 5551, and the same goes for Bertrand. But however, I would highly recommend you awaken Bertrand, to be honest, because Bertrand's must awakening is pretty good, right? He's a mage commander, he's got insane range, and he gets an extra 200 damage factor, but every single skill he has is really solid. Even if you're not pairing him with Tohar and you want to make use of his second skill, then you just put him as a deputy and you get that extra golden mark stack that makes him go brr. So, I think that's it for my tier list on which commander is worth awakening ASAP once you start working on him and which aren't. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. I know this list might be a bit controversial, but again, everything I say is usually based on my opinion, and I am more than happy to discuss. If you have a different thought process, please feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please be sure to drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe, join the Discord. The link is in the description, and I will see you in the next video. Meow meow.